Page 152, have yourself a merry little Christmas. I'm going to start by saying you can just do it the way it's printed. Use the fingering they've got, the pedaling they've got, everything they've got. It's all fine, well and good, no problem. However, I'd like to point out a few things and make some suggestions. I don't know what I spoke about on the other video I did on this for a different Alfred book. Same arrangement, same piece. I don't know what I said, so I'm just going to talk, and it'll be interesting to see if I say the same stuff or not. Who knows? I'm going to start with the right hand. Take a look at the bottom of page 152, the last line, first measure. Look at the fingering in the right hand. This starts with 2 on the E, then a 1 on the G. Okay, you came off of a whole note the measure before, but it's between phrases. So you're going to lift up anyway, and that lets you go ahead and move down to use the 2 again here. And so it's okay. I do want to caution you on passages like in the second line, second measure, the 8th notes. Also, it's the 4th line, second measure, the 8th notes in the right hand. That A at the beginning of that is an 8th note. Don't hold that down. Don't get a heavy finger there. Lift it up. At the end of page 152. Okay, in the last measure on page 152, in the right hand, the last 2 notes, those 2 quarter notes, it's showing 1, 3, because in the next note on the top of page 153 is an E. That's okay, but I think a better fingering here would be a 4 on the C. The reason for that is because there is a sort of a standard fingering for the chord here. This is a C chord, right? It's just the E's on the bottom, and we've added an E on top. So it's 4-note chord. And in playing this, typically in arpeggios and so forth, we typically use a standard fingering for this inversion, and it's this. So it's a 4 on a C. If my arpeggio videos are up, then it wouldn't hurt to go through the C major arpeggio, and if you've been through them and you're ready, the E major arpeggio on the triads, because you will find this chord in that video for E major, because the E's on the bottom. It might help you. On page 153 in the second line, in the right hand, now the melody's at the top, so you're going to bring out the melody, of course. What I'm trying to get across here are the half notes. And it's okay to let the thumb play them, because the interesting stuff is the top note. Just make sure you hold those half notes down for as best you can for the full 2 counts. Even though the pedal's down and the sound's gonna go on anyway, make the fingers do the work. Don't just rely on the pedal to do it. 3rd line down on the first measure, we're coming off of a whole note again, like we did over on page 152. But this time you can go ahead and use the thumb on the C, right? Because it's a different. We're here, not here. So it's different. On the 4th line down, though, you do need to use the 2 on the E. Okay. Now, see, this fingering is a little different than the first measure at the bottom of page 152, because you have a 2, 1, but now it's a 2, not a 3, and then a 4, because we need to play the F. Now, we didn't need to play the F before, so the fingering is a little different. Now, the first measure, the last line on page 153 in the right hand, that's a 2, 3, 5. You could use 2, 4, 5. They say 2, 3, 5. I think 4 or 5 is better. And then a 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and use the third finger on this one because of what comes next. We're going to need our fourth finger on the D in a little bit, and that's the only reason. Otherwise, we would use a fourth finger on that C. So here, and then on the next measure, you have that arpeggiated chord. All right, very quickly, just roll it. Now, on that chord, the E is the melody. Bring that out. All right? And I play that chord with the F on the beat. I play with the F with the left hand. A lot of people would play it with the top note on the beat because it's melody. I don't like that, but you decide how you want to do it. But then in the very last, I'll come back to the last measure for the right hand. We're just getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. I want to talk about the left hand first. Go back to page 152 at the top, first line, last measure. You have a D and a C. And I recommend for the G and the B, you do a 2-3 or a 3-2. Connect them with the fingers. I know the pedal's down, don't worry about it. I'm not concerned. We'll get to the pedal in a minute, so just do this. Connect them with the fingers. In the second line, second measure, you're starting with an F, and then you have a B with the thumb, and a D. The B's tied, so you're going to hold it down while you play the D, and then the C. I know the pedal's down. Don't. Pedal go away. Forget the pedal's down for a moment. We're using the fingers here. Make the fingers do the work. So, third line down, second measure. You have a D. Go ahead and put the little finger on the D. And then 4-2. I like that on the F and the A. And then the next measure, 5 on the E. You're kind of moving up the keyboard because the first measure, that third line, you're down here. Next measure, you go up 1. Go up again. Now here. And that's that last measure, the third line, same fingering as the first line there. 3-2 on the GB. In the last measure of page 152, let's look at this carefully. You're starting out with the hands, the right hand is tied over from the measure before. It's already down. So the left hand plays the G and the C. Now you're going to play the E with the right hand. Okay, so you're going to connect them, but be careful not to overlap them. All right, we want this. Don't overlap the quarter notes, is what I'm saying. We want it to sound like another voice has come along besides this one. We want this voice to do this. Right, and we want to hear that, so it's here. Because this kind of takes us up to, it leads into what comes afterward, is what I'm saying. It's an artistic thing. It's an interpretive thing. So the last two measures of 152 going into 153, we're here. See, it's the top of a phrase, so in the left hand, I'm going to lift the left hand after I play the last C and the next to the last measure, just a little bit, and then drop it down on the G so it sounds like a new phrase. The right hand's just staying down, right? So it's this. It takes a little practice. If you can get it into your head what they're trying to do with the music, it helps to interpret it that way. So I don't know if I've explained it well enough or clear enough for you to get it or not. If I haven't, now at the top of page 153, look at the fingering in the left hand. It's a 3-1 for the F sharp A, then a 4-2, 3-1. Here we're relying on the pedal to connect them. 4-2, and then a 2-1, and then a 2-1. Just follow the fingering they've got as best they show. They don't show it all, but you'll get it. On page 153 in the second line, you're starting out with a 4-2 on the F sharp A, and the next measure, it's a 5-1. I recommend a 4 on the E flat. You can cross over. And then a 1. I like to connect these with the fingers if I can, so the fingers aren't jumping from key to key to key. It's a little more difficult at first when you're first learning to play the piano, but it really is going to come in handy later. So if you can get the idea now, it would help later on. So once again, that second line, 4-2, 5-1, cross over and do a 4, and then a 1, and then a 5-2. Last measure, the top notes is 1, 2, 1. And you're holding the bottom note down. It's a whole note. It's got to be held down the whole measure. Now let's get down to the bottom of the page. Now the last 3 measures. In the left hand, I recommend you use a 3rd finger on that C. The reason is because of what happened before. You're on a GF, the note before. Here. Your 3rd finger's right there. So just do a 3rd finger on the C. And then a 4th finger on the D flat. That's because we're going to use the 5th finger in a minute. So we're using 4th finger now. And then in the last measure you have that chord. It's arpeggiated. So you're going to play those 5 notes, 1 note at a time, starting at the bottom. And again, with arpeggiated notes, how fast you roll depends on the situation. You don't roll arpeggiated notes the same speed all the time. It's an interpretive thing. The first arpeggiated chord there in the last line, those 8th notes, that's got to be held quick or rolled quickly because you don't have any time there. Okay, but this last one, we've died away very gently. It's okay, go to sleep now. So you can actually, if you want, and you'll experiment on your own, I hope, roll these like quarter notes almost. Just make sure you hold them down with, hold them down. If you want, or you want to roll it quicker than that, that's, experiment when you're playing this. Play them very, very slowly. It's very effective at the end of a real sweet, gentle, quiet thing. To do that, the last 3 measures and roll them quickly, I think is out of context. But some people like that effect. If that's what you're after, roll them quickly. But I prefer it rolled slowly. All right, let's talk about the pedal. Now, again, you can pedal it like they're suggesting, then they're doing overlap pedal throughout the whole thing. I personally do not like that. I like to hear a break between the phrases. I like to have the pedal up on certain passages so it's not too mushy, and can be. In this piece, you can get away with some mushiness. It's schmaltzy, it's give and take, it's like a love song pretty much. Have fun with it. Keep the pedaling simple. Look at the first line on page 152. You have 2 phrases. We just want to lift the pedal up at the end of the first phrase and down after you play the notes in the second phrase, so we hear some silence. So if I play the first line like that, it's this. And then there is a break between the phrases, between the end of the first line and the beginning of the next line. So lift the pedal up. You can actually lift the pedal up with the right hand and let the right hand tell you, because the right hand's doing the phrasing for the most part. So at the last measure, the first line is here. Lift the pedal up with the right hand. Now a new phrase. phrase. And again, a new phrase. Now here the phrase is in the left hand. So again, we want the pedal up with the left hand so we hear some silence. So the last two measures of that page 152 is here. Now, on this one, you can go ahead and connect the pedal with this lead-in. You don't have to break that. I mean, it's a little unmusical to have a lead-in and then a break before you go on. If you're going to lead in and keep going. You don't break it at the end of the lead-in and then go on. This, I think, is incorrect. See, I led up to that and then suddenly nothing. And then I continued. That to me is very unmusical. I would lead into it and keep going. That I think is much better. Now there's again, you can see the breaks between the phrases, so you can take care of, I don't really think I need to explain every single one. When we do the play with me, you'll be able to see the pedal at that time. But right now, I don't think I need to explain it all. Just make sure there's a little bit of silence between the phrases, whether it's right hand or left hand. You know, it could be either one. In this case, it's all right hand except that one spot at the end of page 152. And that's pretty much it. At the end of the piece, the pedal and the hands will come up at the same time at the end of the fourth beat. Now, if you're going to play that arpeggio slowly at the end, the very end, okay, you're going to play the first note on the beat, but go ahead and hold it for 4 counts when you play the last note. So we're stretching that chord out. It's not within a strict rhythm here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 off type thing, all right? If you're going to roll it quickly, then you can start counting your beats when you play the first note. 1, 2, 3, 4 off, that type of thing. So it's a little give and take on how we're counting this. It's an interpretive thing. We're not violating what the music says, and as long as you don't violate what the music says, you can do pretty much anything you want. So experiment and see what you think it should be. So, having said all that stuff, let's try this out slowly together. I'm assuming you've learned it now. You can play it more or less, and you know, one hand at a time for a while if you have to. It's not a problem. Learn it first without the pedal, so you're making sure the fingers are holding the notes down the correct length. And then you add the pedal and making sure you can put the break between the phrases where they need to go, and also the dynamics and don't forget all that junk. So let's try it. If you've done all that, we'll go slowly so you can hear the notes to make sure you've got the right notes going. Your right hand is in the C extended position, right? For a C chord. The left hand is here. Foot's on the pedal. I'll give us 4 counts. Let's play this. 1, 2, ready, go. are off.